In this case, a range of peoples from the Western Desert made native title claims, which were bitterly opposed by mining and pastoral interests. The claims were all ultimately rejected in a long, complicated, controversial judgment. One thing the court had to assess was whether the claimant groups formed a society with rules. Justice Lindgren quoted from an earlier native title judgment, Yorta Yorta, which referred to the foundational authority Mabo No. 2, saying, "The fundamental premise from which the decision in Mabo No. 2 proceeded is that the laws and customs of the indigenous peoples of this country constituted bodies of normative rules, which could give rise to, and in fact had given rise to, rights and interests in relation to land or waters." To assess this claim, His Honour had to assess whether the claimant groups, the Western Desert Cultural Bloc, had a system of laws capable of creating rights and obligations in relation to land. His Honour had to distinguish between rules, which we describe as being normative because they establish norms or standards, and mere cultural practices, which influence people's behaviour without actually making rules. Expert anthropologists and sociologists were helpful but not conclusive, and along the way His Honour turned to jurisprudence, to legal theory, and in particular to the teachings of Professor HLA Hart, who said in The Concept of Law, "What is necessary is that there should be a critical, reflective attitude to certain patterns of behaviour as a common standard, and that this should display itself in criticism, including self-criticism, demands for conformity, and in acknowledgements that such criticism and demands are justified, all of which find their characteristic expression in the normative terminology of ought, must and should, right and wrong." In the end, the judge was unable to make a clear finding on this question. His Honour said, "There can be no doubt that there were and are some similar cultural practices observed right across the Western Desert, and that at least some of them had and have a normative content. If that is sufficient to characterise the people of the Western Desert as a normative society, so be it. I will assume in favour of the present claim groups that it is." Despite that assumption, which was one tiny step in a massive chain of reasoning, the court found that the native title claims were not proved.